my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, our light and our Redeemer. Amen. From there he set out, and he went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know that he was there. Yet he could not escape notice, but a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him. And she came and she bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home. She found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by the way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee, in the region of Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and he touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed, and he said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, and his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one. But the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." This is God's word spoken for you, and the people say together, "Thanks be to God." Please bow your heads in prayer. Loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Do you know who is the most hesitant, the most reluctant, the most pushover person in the entire Bible? Do you know who the most hesitant, the most reluctant, and the most easily pushed over in the entire Bible? Who would that character be? The question was posed by a character in a Martin Cruz Smith novel. The novel's called Wolves Eat Dogs. And the lead character is stumped when asked this question by two Orthodox Jewish men. It's a tough question after all, right? Because the Bible seems to be filled with a lot of hesitant characters. There's a lot of competition for the biggest, most reluctant, most hesitant, most apathetic, perhaps easiest pushover status in the entire Bible. In their opinion in this book, the biggest, most hesitant, easiest to push over in the entire Bible, believe it or not, was Noah. Why Noah? The detective asked. This was a new indictment. Because he didn't argue, the two men said. Noah should have argued. Yaakov explained in the novel, Abraham argues with God not to kill everyone in Sodom and Gomorrah. Moses pleads and argues with God not to kill worshipers in the whole golden calf incident. But God tells Noah to build a boat because he's going to flood the entire world. And what do you remember Noah saying? Nothing. Not a word, says Bobby in the book. And save the minimum 2 creatures, 2 giraffes, 2 elephants, and still Noah says, wait, nothing. Not a word. What in the world? They want to know as they argue amongst themselves in this book. Are they being a bit hard on Noah? Imagine that if God speaks to you directly, asking you to do something like go to Guatemala on a mission trip, go to Kansas for a call, do something totally different like build a boat. you be compliant? Or do you imagine yourself finding a voice to say a few words, to utter a few words to God? I like my job as it is, perhaps you'd say. I don't want to move my family across the country. I don't want to go to Guatemala. I don't want to go to Russia. I don't want to do this thing that you're calling me to do. But Noah says nothing. Talking back to God, we hear today in Mark's gospel, is not only okay, it's also a gift given to us from God. It's an invitation that Jesus issues today to this Gentile, Syrophoenician, outskirt, marginalized, poor woman who everyone else would basically say goes unnoticed in the world. And Jesus issues an invitation to spar back, to talk back to God. It's a remarkable exchange, and I want you to think for a minute about moments in your life when you've been invited by Jesus to talk back to him. How is it that Jesus chooses a sparring partner, a woman, a Gentile, a person whom Jesus appears right away to insult, right? It seems like what is happening here? How does it feel to you to hear Jesus, the one that we worship in the human form, seeing him issue an insult to a woman? However, the woman refuses to accept the insult and the full force of the offense, and instead she uses Jesus' own words. She uses the metaphor that Jesus has introduced to suggest that she and her daughter are worthy of even the crumbs that fall at Jesus' feet. The reference to food is particularly fitting in the middle of Mark's gospel. There's all these healing stories and miraculous feeding stories, and here we have one woman who no one else notices. Jesus invites her to talk back, and she says, wait a minute, I am worthy of even the crumbs that fall from the table. Where the woman's retort could be viewed as a bit snippy, Jesus evidently, you see, immediately rewarding her persistence. And on the very basis of her words, he dismisses her immediately with the promise that the demon has left her daughter, verse 29. The reversal that Jesus demonstrates is a willingness to perform a miracle for her. Don't you want Jesus to perform a few miracles for you? Verse 30 provides a clear conclusion to the story, assuring us that Jesus has not only issued an invitation, but come forward with assurance of a promised result. So Jesus issues this invitation to each of us today to talk back. Here's the thing, it's possible that maybe we need to have a little more courage to do so. One writer says this, to point to the sparring match and notice that Jesus is referring to the woman and her daughter as dogs. N.T. Wright says maybe it's not meant to be as rude, but more or less an invitation. Because in the Jewish society, sparring and debating back and forth was normal practice. So basically the woman doesn't hesitate. She says, I need this. Sir, even the dogs under the table deserve children's crumbs. And then we see the immediate response. For having said that. For having said that, her daughter is healed. Beautiful. So who is God for you in that precise moment of admiring this marginalized woman on the outskirts of society? Who is God for you in that moment? What do you know about God from that particular moment? What do you know about God from that particular moment in Mark 7? Perhaps we know that God is going to nudge us, to jab us, to poke us, to kind of continue to reach out to us, to take initiative with us, to say, talk back, enter into this relationship with me. What is the moment in all of these verses that gets you? What is the moment that fascinates you? that thrills you or that haunts you, that troubles you, that jumps out to meet you, that interests you the most? Verse 30 appears to be a tangible moment. We're saying that the woman is dismissed and the demon has left her daughter. That moment gets me as a mom, as a parent, because I find huge assurance that a persistent mother's plea is actually heard, right? That the persistence of a mother to say to Jesus, I will not have my child be forgotten. Yes, we're poor. Yes, we are Gentiles. Yes, in this world that we live in, nobody seems to take notice of it, but I want you, Jesus, to notice. As a mom, as a parent, as a grandparent, as an aunt, an uncle, or a friend, isn't that a pivotal passage? The two healing stories, and the next healing is the healing of the deaf man. And they're put together because they have one thing in common. They can easily rub us the wrong way, can't they? They can easily rub us the wrong way. Why? Because people who we might judge to be undeserving of bending the ear of Jesus, God, and God's self, somehow are able to bend the ear of God, and God listens. So does this throw wide open the gospel? Does it unsettle you a bit, perhaps? You may have heard the story about a guy who was walking down the street when he sees a sign in someone's front yard. And the sign says, for sale, cheap talking dog. This sounds too good to pass up. So the man steps up to the front door, rings the bell. Is it really true you have a talking dog for sale? Yes, he's in the backyard. Go back there and see him if you want. The guy walks around to the back of the house. Sure enough, sitting there in front of the dog house is a dog. And the dog sidles up to him and says, I talk. So what's your story, the man asks. And the mutt says, I discovered pretty young, while I was still a puppy, that I have this huge gift of human discourse. I was hired by the CIA to be a dog in troubled areas. I can sit in a room with dictators and generals. I can hear everything. Little did they know that I could hear and comprehend. I was a foreign agent dog. Eventually, I grew weary of the glamorous life of a spy dog. I wasn't getting any younger. I figured it was high time to settle down and have some puppies, gnaw on a few bones, take it easy for a while. That's the most incredible story I've ever heard, the man says. He goes back to the house and he asks the owner, how much do you want for the dog? $10, sold. And as the man is handing over the money, he asks the owner one last question. Tell me, this dog has such an amazing talent. Why are you selling him? He's such a liar, the man says. Verse 27 presents one of the most problematic elements in the whole story today, right? Because Jesus implicitly compares the woman and her daughter to dogs. He states that the food intended for the children, presumably Jewish children only, should not be thrown to the dogs, presumably the Gentiles, such as the woman and her daughter. Jesus goes on to use the most diminutive word form for dog to refer to her as someone who is totally unworthy. And yet the woman has the courage to speak back after such an offense. Imagine talking back to God's Son in that scenario. Consider being insulted by Jesus and then finding the courage to say right back, I am deserving. Where do you need to say that to God right now? Where has God issued you an invitation and you need to say to God, I am worthy of that calling? The admiration of Jesus towards this woman and the almost playful way that Jesus immediately changes his demeanor and says to her, go home. This has been a fun thing and you are resolved. I have heard you. Go on home. Get out of here. Go about your business. It shows an approachability to God, doesn't it? Imagine a homeless woman interrupting the dinner of the President of the United States to ask for some sort of a favor. Many who have received so many insults might have hung their head in shame and crept away. Imagine she could have felt insignificant. She could have given up. Instead, she responded with confidence and boldness. The first response of Jesus feels so human and dismissive, void of compassion. But the second response of Jesus is the divine Jesus, expanding his love, not restricting it to any boundaries, throwing wide open the doors of no more gender, racism, socioeconomic judgments, no more focus on nationality, no more rich or poor, bring everybody to the table. So pause for a few minutes to think about who you normally shun. Who do you normally shun? The smelly? The person on drugs? The one who seeks a handout? And yet those we shun have the ear of God. Their hurts, their pains, and their needs are always noticed. Consider talking back to God on their behalf. Like Sweet Rose Baxter, hospitalized for a month due to hip surgery. Her husband had died of a sudden stroke. She slipped on ice at her husband's funeral. She fractures her hip. She's emotionally vulnerable. The doctor comes in the room. Her first words to the doctor, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you, God?" Faith requires talking back. That's what's going to help us help the world heal a bit more. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Holy and gracious God, like the deaf man and the woman who needed her daughter to be removed of the demon, we are all in need of healing. Some of us have sick bodies, others have sick souls, minds, or spirits. Some of us, and all of us, need a word or a touch from you, the great doctor, the great physician, because we stand before you totally incapable of making ourselves well. We are powerless over all the demons that beset us. Anger as a demon, worry, anxiety, fear that grips our hearts, depression, anxiety that steals our joy, and disease and jealousy that robs us of vitality. Circumstances, God, beyond our control, plant seeds of doubt within us. Look upon us now with mercy and compassion as we mention in a few minutes those who are in desperate need of your healing touch. Come to us and rescue us, God, that we might faithfully trust in your guiding presence and have the courage to be your voice. In your name we pray. Amen. As a people of faith, let's stand together and let's affirm our faith today. We, the church, proclaim Jesus Christ, Son of God, merciful Savior, guiding shepherd. We acknowledge him as faithful healer, compassionate friend, Prince of Peace. We honor him as Word incarnate, wisdom personified, love incarnate. To Jesus Christ be all praise and glory, for he alone is the worthy Lamb. He alone defeated death and sits at our right hand. Let us with joy boldly proclaim Jesus the Christ. Amen. Each week our offerings are an opportunity to give a living testimony about moments when we caught a glimpse of Jesus Christ.